Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Guess where I'm at right now? This is Stanford campus, and in this video I'm talking to someone who had just graduated from Stanford, and after his 4-year journey thinks that Stanford may not be the answer. So if you're interested, please stay tuned. Today I have a special guest, Nikhil Goel.
Hi guys, thanks Luba for having me on the channel.
Of course. Nikhil is the author of a book called Dreaming of Stanford, How to Rethink High School and the Pursuit of College. Nikhil, can you tell us briefly what the book is about and whom is it for?
Yeah, so my co-author Sanjay and I wrote this book after asking ourselves a few questions. Namely, why did we want to go to Stanford so bad? Did going there solve any of our sort of existential angst? And having gone there, what advice would we give to our younger selves, or say a younger sibling? And this book is principally for high schoolers, and it's something that I wish I'd carried in my backpack at all times throughout high school and college.
Awesome, I'm excited to ask you some more questions about it.
Cool.
The reason I'm interviewing Nikhil is because a few months ago I came across his Medium blog post with a Stanford manifesto and his journey through Stanford and his thoughts on what he wished he would have known before going into Stanford. I personally thought it was really good and thought-provoking, and you know, a lot of us have dreamt of going to Stanford and thought it was an answer to all of our desires, dreams, and aspirations. And I think what Nikhil has to say is really interesting and something you might want to consider before you try to fulfill that dream of yours or really think that this is the answer to all. Nikhil, was there a moment at which you really felt to write this manifesto and share it with the world?
Yeah, one fall morning, my senior year of Stanford, I received a call from a distant family friend, someone who I hadn't really spoken to in a long time, but he asked me, hey, do you have any tips for getting into Stanford? So I first started off by just asking him what his interests were, and he said, basketball. My dad set me up with a startup experience last summer, and so I asked, did you enjoy it? He said, yeah, I mean, it was all right. And after a few sort of lackadaisical responses later, I kind of got the feeling that he didn't know why he wanted to go or what he really wanted to get out of going to Stanford. And I thought, wow, so many kids in high school are just like him.
Yeah.
Not really having any specific mission or dream in mind, not really knowing why they want to go to college. And I kind of got frustrated after this call. I'd forgotten that this was a thing. This was something that I had experienced a little bit of in high school. And I know that all of my friends in high school went through this. And I was like, man, I feel like I have some of the answers to these now, these questions now, and a general framework to help students, specifically in high school, come to their own conclusions about some of these questions. So that was the trigger that I was like, okay, I gotta write all this stuff down. And that's sort of the birth of this book.
Something that actually came to mind while you were telling me why you decided to write the book is that being an international student back in the day and deciding to go to a famous Canadian university, it was an opportunity for me to learn things about myself and what I liked, being surrounded by a lot of like-minded people. And you know, Stanford for a lot of international kids is this mecca where they can fulfill their dreams that might not necessarily be supported in their home country. So is your book mostly targeted towards international people or American audience?
So given that my personal experience was going through the American educational system, I can't speak a whole lot to how international students sort of view a lot of these colleges. But it seems like from your own story, you were very sort of mindful about why you wanted to go to the Canadian university. And I think that what we're sort of preaching is not do or don't go to college, but rather don't move on autopilot. Don't do the thing that your community or society or parents or teachers or peers or whatever tell you to do. If you come to the realization that this is what you want to do, this is where you want to go, more power to you. You should do it. Go to Stanford, go to whatever university you want to go to.
Got it.
But I will say that in the American education system, we don't have the data to back this up, but I think that doing something that excites you and doing it to sort of the highest level that you can is probably more impressive to college counselors than being, just another member of your academic honor society or getting a 2400 on the SAT, which is, while it's, great, it's like, okay, a lot of people can, put in the hours to do that. On the sort of flip side of that, a lot of the international students, their acceptance into a lot of universities, whether at home or elsewhere, is sort of hinged on one exam. Now, if they're applying to sort of a school like Stanford or what have you, the opportunity for them is really incredible and amazing because they come to America and they have perhaps opportunities that they don't have in their home country. And it is more competitive for them. With that being said, though, I think the core message is still the same, which is that as a high schooler, it's very easy to move on autopilot. So really be mindful about why are you going to college, what are you hoping to get out of it, and what does it allow you to do?
Can you give us a little more detail on what readers can expect from reading your book, from reading the manifesto, and how it's broken down?
The manifesto is principally about navigating this process of self-definition that Sanjay and I went through, and that literally every college graduate that I know went through in college. And manifesto isn't really a set of edicts. It's not a set of do's and don'ts. It's more a framework of questions that, if you work through, can help you come to your own conclusions about what do you want to do, what is your mission, what are your values, and sort of what do you hope to get out of school.
So will it kind of take me through the journey of figuring those things out?
It will. I think a lot of it is sort of a high-level logical discourse, but there are really, really concrete, actionable items that you can take away from the book. We sort of walk you through developing your interests, for example. A lot of people, like myself in high school, I just had so many interests, I didn't know what to pick.
Right.
And I think if you have too many, you sort of fall into this paradox of choice where you're surrounded by all of these things. How do you even get started on any single one? So we sort of help the reader walk through that. We also help the reader walk through developing a value system, which I think is really important, especially in high school and college, where it's very easy to sort of kind of be swayed with the flow of things, and much harder to sort of put your flag in the sand and say, this is who I am, this is what I want, and these are the people that I want to surround myself with.
What would you say is the most helpful part of the book that the audience can really take something away from?
Well, you read the book. What would you say is the part that you got the most value from?
I thought the part about boundary constraints and really defining what your goal is and what kind of hand of cards you have to play with to get to that goal, I could really relate to that because, I studied chemical engineering at school, but then after some time I realized I didn't want to do that anymore. And one of my really big constraints was I had to stay in the country and I was on visas, so I couldn't just drop out of school and take some time off and soul search because I would just not be able to stay in the country. So that was a really major concern. But then when I got to see what California was like, oh my God, I really want to try to work here, but at the same time, the best way to get a job here is to program. And I, at the time, already realized I didn't like chemical engineering. So then my constraint was the fact that I didn't know how to do it, and I needed to really hone down and work hard and learn. So I think that part of defining what you want, defining what your constraints are, and maybe some of the constraints are not really that important. Is it really important for you to earn a certain set of money that maybe your parents told you you should earn? Or is it that important for you to go to this name school versus that name school because someone really ingrained that thought in your mind? So I think you really need to think about all those things, and I really like that part of the manifesto.
Yeah, so it sounds like you were really sort of cognizant about what your boundary conditions were, which is really cool to hear. I think that everyone should really go through that process, which we help you do in the book, of actually listing out what conditions exist for me, what may not exist for me, and what really don't exist for me. For example, I have access to internet, but some places in the world they don't have access to internet. That's terrible. And I think that everyone sort of has ideas of what constraints exist for them in the back of their head. And the book sort of helps you list those things explicitly. And you're totally right that some of those may be exaggerated. For example, I'm Indian. I come from the Indian community, which often says you need to be a doctor or a lawyer, what have you. Exactly. So that one day you can make 250,000, whatever it is, per year. But you have to ask yourself, how much money do I really need to be happy? Is sort of having a high status job in the eyes of society, is that really important to me? Or is that something that my parents and grandparents and family friends deem important?
Nikhil actually did go to Stanford. So Nikhil, I'm sure you were asked this a lot. Why should you tell people not to go to Stanford even though you have gone to Stanford?
Yeah, that was probably the single biggest I guess concern of ours in writing the manifesto was we did go to Stanford, we did benefited from the osmosis of being in a place like this, of being surrounded by so many interesting and intelligent people. Now let me be very clear that the point of this manifesto is not to say don't go to Stanford. The point is simply to help you start being more mindful about the decisions you're making, specifically in regards to your interests, your missions, and where you want to go to school. And I believe that what's more important than the institution that you end up going to is maintaining your inner drive and your excitement about things. And the longer your desires and actions are misaligned, I think the harder it is to maintain that inner drive.
Stanford is in the heart of Silicon Valley, and so many famous companies and startups were founded by people who've graduated from Stanford, dropped out of Stanford, and went there to start their companies. So how does the manifesto play a role for someone who has the dreams and pursuits of starting a company and wants to come to Silicon Valley and to Stanford to fulfill those dreams?
I think if you're in that mindset, the manifesto will make you more sure of taking that step of going to Stanford, because you will be surrounded by a lot of people who do have that same ambition. That being said, Stanford is not a necessary step to take. There are many alternatives today, and I think the manifesto will help you sort of be confident enough to explore those other possibilities. But Stanford is a great place. I had a great time here, a lot of amazing moments, beautiful campus, and
so maybe you guys should just check out the campus, read the manifesto, and see whether you're convinced that the Stanford is the right place for you to go. Thank you so much for being here, Nikhil, and answering my questions.
Thank you for having me on the channel, Luba, and thanks guys for tuning in.
If you guys are interested in checking out Nikhil's manifesto, I will link it in the description down below. And I hope you found this video valuable. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell me whether you want to go to Stanford. What is your dream school? Leave that in the section down below. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye for now.